Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about a secret alliance which is taking shape amid the Russia-Ukraine war, one which has far-reaching geopolitical implications. I am talking about Pakistan's secret alliance with Ukraine. The country has been arming Ukraine amid the war. How exactly is Russia viewing this? Will Moscow punish this double dealing by Islamabad? Will it call out Pakistan's bluff? If yes, how? Also, why exactly is Pakistan arming Ukraine? Tonight on Gravitas, we tell you all about the Pakistan-Ukraine defense axis. Also on the show for you tonight, a battle is underway in Pakistan. We tell you why the Pakistan government is clashing with the judiciary. Bhutan says China has equal say in resolving the Doklam issue. Is China creating fault lines in the India-Bhutan relationship? Is the Chinese pressure on Bhutan succeeding? Will UPI transactions in India become costlier for you? We tell you all that you need to know about the latest announcement. Is the Wuhan virus coming back in India? The latest spike in infections is a growing cause of concern. We get you the story behind the numbers. Our big story tonight is about a secret alliance in the Ukraine war. Let's begin with the question. Which country is supplying Ukraine with critical battlefield weapons at a time when Ukraine is desperate for them? For crucial rockets and main battle tanks? Is it Poland, the United States, Britain, France, Italy? You're not even close. The answer is Pakistan. Islamabad is providing not only arms but also facilitating the supply of terrorists to Ukraine, engaged in a war with Russia that has resulted in massive casualties and destruction of military hardware. Pakistan sent the weapons secretly through the ports of Germany and Poland and to the air bases of Romania. And over the next few minutes, we blow the lid off this alliance, its secret operations, its third-party routes, also its hidden network of mercenaries. I'll start with this report. It came out on Tuesday. It says the Ukrainian army has just received consignments of military equipment from Pakistan. And what was in these consignments, you ask? Pakistani rockets, the most lethal ones. I am talking about the Yarmouk HE frag rockets. These are unguided surface-to-surface rockets developed by the Pakistan Ordnance Factories. You see, they can go to a maximum distance of 20 kilometers with a maximum flight time of 78 seconds and a muzzle velocity of 400 meters per second. And these rockets are now in Ukraine's arsenal. In fact, they have already been sent to the battlefield. Have a look at these images on your screen. These are Ukrainian soldiers unloading the Yarmouks. They are using them in the rocket launchers. And the question is, how did these weapons even reach Ukraine? Because officially, Pakistan has not acknowledged any military assistance to Kiev. Well, they were sent via third parties like Romania, Poland, Germany. And if I speak of Romania specifically, It has reportedly built an air bridge with Pakistan, a secret aerial route meant for weapons supply. Britain apparently played a big role in establishing this. If I speak of Poland and Germany, for months now, their ports have been buzzing with consignments from Karachi. In fact, in late February, Pakistan reportedly sent 10,000 rockets to these countries. 10,000. The rockets were then secretly routed to Kiev. And it's not just rockets, by the way. Pakistan is also giving Ukraine mercenaries who can wield these rockets, muscle men, or guns for hire straight from battle-hardened Afghanistan. In fact, reports say it is doing so at the behest of its American overlords. And no, these are not alternative pro-Russia media houses reporting this. These are mainstream American news outlets and networks, like the New York Times. On the 25th of March, it carried this report. It talked about groups of volunteers that are currently fighting in Ukraine. It said these groups are illegally exporting mercenaries, smuggling them with fake passports from countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan. And who exactly are these mercenaries? Well, most of them are former Afghan soldiers who once fought the Taliban, and today they have fled their homeland and are fighting the Russians in Donbass. In fact, the Ukrainian president has created an international legion, a separate division of foreign fighters that are fighting on behalf of Ukraine. There are at least 20,000 of them. They come from 52 countries. Pakistan and Afghanistan happen to be the biggest contributors to this legion. And what do they get in return? Well, the Afghan fighters get a new lease of life and lucrative loads of cash. And as for Pakistan, in return for giving mercenaries and weapons, it gets what it needs the most right now, and that's money. I don't need to tell you why. The country is cash-strapped, to say the least. The economy is in the doldrums, the rupee at the bottom of the barrel. So by secretly arming Ukraine, Pakistan is raising its forex reserves, reserves which it needs to survive. And there is suspicion that such assistance to American strategic interests also helps in getting American assistance in the negotiations with the IMF for loans that Pakistan is unlikely to repay because the default on the loans is its standard operating practice. The question is Moscow aware of this? It certainly is. But it is yet to directly call out Islamabad. The two are in the middle of negotiating a crude oil deal. But reports say the delay in finalizing this deal has started to irk the Russians. The headline on your screen proving this, it says Moscow has expressed serious concerns over Pakistan's failure in setting up a company responsible for importing crude to Pakistani refineries. And this failure has apparently highly disappointed Moscow. Is that the real reason, or is Moscow angry about the Pakistan-Ukraine defense axis? And here's why I ask this. Earlier today, a security conference was held in New Delhi, a conference of national security advisors from the SCO countries, chaired by Ajit Doval. In attendance was Nikolai Patrushev. He is the secretary to Russia's Security Council and one of the few people extremely close to Vladimir Putin. A report by the Economic Times says Patrushev may have discussed Pakistan's actions with Doval, the secret military alliance which it has established with Kiev. So the question is Moscow about to retaliate for Islamabad's double dealing? We will find out soon enough. So on the diplomatic front, Pakistan is indulging in deception. And on the domestic front, it is indulging in authoritarianism. I don't say this without reason. Pakistan has just approved a bill that will curtail the powers of the country's Chief Justice. Why was such a bill needed? What exactly does it entail? Our next report telling you.
This is Umar Atta Bandial, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, the latest target of the Pakistan government. On Wednesday, it approved a bill to curtail his powers, a decision that has sparked a big debate. A debate on whether the government is overstepping its role. We'll get there in a bit. First, let's tell you about the bill. It's called the Supreme Court Act 2023. It was presented by Pakistan's Law Minister Azam Nazir Tarar. Here's what it entails. 1. Ending the Chief Justice's power to initiate proceedings in his individual capacity. 2. Empowering a committee of 3 judges to take suo motu notice of cases. 3. Granting the right to appeal against suo motu verdicts within 30 days of their passing. 4. Any case involving interpretation of the Constitution to have a 5-judge bench. In a nutshell, the aim of this bill is to remove the CJP's discretionary powers and give them to a committee of judges. Why did Pakistan need such a bill? Because apparently the Chief Justice is favoring Imran Khan. We are not saying this. Pakistan's own leaders are. In February, the Chief Justice trespassed into the executive's space and launched suo motu proceedings over elections in Punjab. No one asked the top court to do this. It took this action of its own accord. The PMLN said he did so because he's Imran Khan's friend. A month on, the PMLN is trying to clip his wings. And as expected, Imran Khan is mighty upset. He says this move is illegal. It's aimed at putting more pressure on the judiciary. This is what he said in a tweet. The attack on the Supreme Court of Pakistan by the gang of criminals, the attempts to reduce its powers and degrade it, is being strongly resisted by the people, and this resistance will continue. So where are things headed? Well, the bill has been passed in the National Assembly. It will now head to the Senate for approval, where the ruling alliance has a majority. If the bill is approved by the Senate, it will be sent to the President, who interestingly is from the PTI. To put it simply, the coming days in Pakistani politics could be filled with fireworks. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Is the Chinese pressure on Bhutan succeeding? Have the Chinese been able to successfully create a rift between India and Bhutan? Has Beijing pressured Thimphu into ceding land? Well, it looks like the answer is yes. Meet Lote Tshering. He is the Prime Minister of Bhutan, and recently he gave an interview to a Belgian daily, where he said that China has a say in the Doklam issue, much like India and Bhutan. Let me read out his exact statement. Doklam is a junction point between India, China and Bhutan. It is not up to Bhutan alone to solve the problem. We are 3. There is no big or small country. There are 3 equal countries, each counting for a third. If you don't find this statement jarring, then allow me to add some context to it. Doklam was a place where 6 years ago, India and China came near to a military conflict. In 2017, China was trying to extend an illegally constructed road and stretch it towards Mount Gipmochi and the Jamperi Ridge, which is adjacent to Doklam, and Indian troops prevented this construction. The standoff lasted 2 months. The Jamperi Ridge is in Bhutan, and Gipmochi sits on the border between India and Bhutan. Why was the Indian army involved? Because Doklam overlooks parts of India. And for obvious security reasons, India does not want China to get access to Doklam. But Beijing wants this military advantage, and that is why it has been eyeing Doklam and claiming all of Doklam. Let's pull out a map for you. This is Batang La. This is where the tri-junction point between the three countries lies. On the west is India's Sikkim. On the north is China's Chumbi Valley. And on the south and east is Bhutan. This is the tri-junction point that is internationally accepted. China wants it shifted by 7 kilometers. 7 kilometers south of Batang La. Somewhere here, near the peak of Mount Kipmochi. Moving this tri-junction point would legally make the entire Doklam Plateau a part of China and give it a site of the strategic Siliguri corridor, something that is obviously not acceptable to India. In fact, back in 2017, Bhutan's position was analogous with India's, but that seems to have changed quickly. 6 years later, the Bhutanese Prime Minister says there has been no intrusion by the Chinese into Bhutan. Again, let me quote him. A lot of information is circulating in the media about Chinese facilities in Bhutan. We are not making a big deal about them because they are not in Bhutan. We have said it categorically. There is no intrusion as mentioned in the media. This is an international border and we know exactly what belongs to us. And how true is this claim? Satellite images show Chinese constructions along the Amochu River Valley. There are Chinese villages here, not one or two, but several. The Chinese have also constructed a road here, and this road goes through Bhutan. So here's the bitter truth. China is salami slicing Bhutan, and the country's leadership is looking the other way, even legitimizing the Chinese intrusion and occupation by denying it altogether. Sharing is also giving up ownership of Bhutanese land on which the Chinese have created settlements. You see, he is telling the world that China has a stake and a say in Doklam, whereas Beijing does not and should not either. And as for New Delhi, it is choosing to remain silent. But does that in any way dial down the security challenge of having China breathing down India's neck? Sharing says that his country is ready for discussion, provided the other two countries are. But whatever does he plan to discuss? The status of Doklam? What happened to fighting for one's land, to protecting one's country? Less than 4 years ago, in 2019, Sharing had told an Indian daily that no country should do anything near the tri-junction point, unilaterally. And today, he is publicly ceding land. You see, the timing could not be more interesting because this interview comes months after a meeting in the Chinese city of Kunming. Who all were a part of this meeting? Bhutanese and Chinese officials. And these officials met to discuss a 3-step roadmap to settle the border disputes. A joint statement was released soon after. So we are back to the questions that we started with. Is the Chinese pressure on Bhutan succeeding? Have the Chinese been able to successfully create a rift between India and Bhutan? Has Beijing pressured Thimphu into ceding land? I think you have the answers. You see, that's the thing with China. It uses a mixture of pressure, persuasion, and sophisticated diplomacy to expand its diplomatic reach and to score some impressive diplomatic points, like what China is doing in West Asia. You see, it's trying to replace American influence in this region. First, China brokered peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And now it could be pursuing Saudi Arabia to pull out of the Yemen War. You heard that right. The word is that Riyadh could soon be pulling out. There is no official confirmation yet, but signs abound. Number one being, Saudi Arabia is talking peace with Iran, the same Iran that backs the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who in turn are fighting the Saudi-backed government. Basically, Iran and Saudi Arabia are fighting each other in Yemen, but now that the two are looking to shake hands, chances of a direct impact on the Yemen war are pretty high. Because experts say it is unlikely that the China broker deal did not have some understanding that Iran would hold back arms supply to the Houthis in Yemen, or something on those lines. Which brings us to single number 2. Let's just rewind 9 days. On the 20th of March, the two sides in Yemen swapped prisoners. Among them were 15 Saudis. Reacting to this, one expert said the move, quote unquote, indicates the way ahead for all parties. So what exactly is this way forward? Is it a possible de-escalation? Time for some quick background. The Saudi-led military intervention in Yemen began in 2015. Why? Because Riyadh feared the prospect of Houthis taking control of Yemen and of Yemen becoming a satellite of Iran. And this is where the two countries are located. Yemen and Saudi Arabia share a border. So in March 2015, Saudi Arabia began air campaigns in Yemen. And ever since, some thousands of people have died in these Saudi-led airstrikes. This is according to UN estimates. Today, Yemen has become the face of the world's largest humanitarian crisis. At least 377,000 people have lost their lives. 60% of these deaths were caused by hunger, unsafe water, lack of health care. Over 10,000 children have been killed or injured. 80% of the country's remaining population needs aid, needs protection. Could the shifting sands in this part of the world give them some hope? Could it open avenues for resolution? Could the thaw between Saudi Arabia and Iran create a landscape for a peace talk or a peace deal in Yemen? You see, here's one thing that the Chinese President Xi Jinping is absolutely clear about. He wants to be a peacemaker in Ukraine, in West Asia. So he will not leave any stone unturned to broker peace and to show to the world that while the region was at war under American influence, China is here to oversee peace. In fact, just yesterday, on the 28th of March, Xi Jinping and the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had a long phone call. Chinese state media CCTV reported that during the interaction, Xi Jinping said that China and Saudi Arabia will make more contributions to promote peace, stability and development in West Asia. And a day later, you have reports of a possible intent to pull out of Yemen. Could it be a mere coincidence? Or could the long phone conversation have been the basis of the decision regarding Yemen? While Xi Jinping wants to score diplomatic points, pulling out of Yemen also helps Saudi Arabia in more ways than one. First, it gets to focus on Vision 2030, which is a dream project of the Crown Prince involving reduced dependence on oil, diversification of the Saudi economy, also development of healthcare, education, infrastructure, recreation, tourism. Saudi Arabia is looking at a new future, one where the war does not quite fit in. Also, the war in Yemen has not been doing Saudi Arabia any good. If anything, the Houthis have been hell-bent on disrupting the Saudi oil industry. In the last couple of years, Saudi oil facilities have been struck with drones, there have been attacks. Is this scenario sustainable? Riyadh can do without this headache and focus on getting a facelift, focus on opening up, on building a $500 billion futuristic city, NEOM. All that it needs in return is an assurance that the Saudi border will be safe. Will China step in to get Iran to give this assurance to Riyadh? Probably it already has. Exiting the war also let Saudi Arabia zoom out and focus beyond the immediate region, look for partners beyond the existing strategic partnerships. And this is again where China comes in. Beijing is happy to tilt Riyadh's axis away from the United States. I don't know if you know this, but China has already invited Saudi Arabia to join the SCO, or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Have a look at this report. The approval was given during a cabinet session, during which the Saudi King Salman also authorized the launch of technical and vocational training between Riyadh and Beijing. He also thanked China for facilitating good neighborly relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So you see what's happening here. China is using its sophisticated diplomacy to clear the clutter from the Saudi discourse and make enough space for Chinese influence in the region. And guess what? It all seems to be working just perfectly. So this is China. Fresh out of the pandemic, it wants the world on its own terms. Does that mean China is walking down the path of peace without its habit to indulge in wolf warrior diplomacy? Wrong. There are some things that the dragon cannot give up. Things like bullying, its belief in an alternate reality, or even its desire to invade Taiwan. Let me quickly tell you what's been happening on that front. The Taiwanese president, Tsai Ing-wen, is on a 10-day trip to Belize and Guatemala. And during this trip, the leader has two stopovers. The first stopover is in New York, the second in Los Angeles. So Tsai Ing-wen is expected to make the most of these stopovers, including meeting the US House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy. While the meeting has not been formally announced, the chances of it happening are quite high. It goes without saying, China is seeing red. The Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, believes that American support for Taiwan amounts to nothing short of interference in China's domestic affairs. And now, Tsai Ing-wen meeting the speaker, who is only second in line to succeed the president, is being seen as nothing short of a provocation. And as expected, China has already issued a warning. A Chinese spokesperson said that Tsai's meeting with McCarthy would trigger a response from China. I'm quoting, "We firmly oppose this and will definitely take measures to resolutely fight back." What kind of measures? Last year, when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, remember, China responded with large-scale military exercises around Taiwan, including firing missiles close to Taiwan's coast. Will the upcoming meeting trigger a response even more charged? Here's what Tsai Ing-wen has to say. I'm quoting, "External pressure will not hinder our determination to advance towards the world. We are calm and self-confident and will not yield or provoke." Which brings us to a question. While China is scoring diplomatic points around the world, in Europe, even West Asia, is Taiwan becoming China's sour grape, forcing it to look beyond? Our next story comes from the United States, where President Biden has dissuaded the Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu from moving forward with his proposed judicial reforms. Netanyahu has fired back and escalated that dispute with America. Let's get you the details. Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to Joe Biden's criticism of the controversial judicial reforms, saying that he will reject any pressure from the White House. The statement from Netanyahu coming after Biden said that he will not invite Netanyahu to the White House in the near term. He followed this up with a rebuke of Netanyahu's judicial reforms, the same reforms, remember, which sparked mass protests in Israel. Biden has shown great concern for the people of Israel, saying that Netanyahu cannot continue down this road. He also urged the Israeli leader to work out a genuine compromise and emphasized that he should simply walk away. Listen in.
Like many strong supporters of Israel, I'm very concerned. And I'm concerned that they get this straight. They cannot continue down this road. And I've sort of made that clear. Hopefully the Prime Minister will act in a way that he can try to work out some genuine compromise, but that remains to be seen.
Netanyahu has, of course, not taken that criticism well. He has justified his actions by saying that Israel is a sovereign country which does not take its decisions based on pressures from abroad, especially from its best friends. The Israeli Prime Minister has also spoken about the pause taken regarding the judicial reforms.
I think that balance can be achieved. And that's why I've promoted a pause that now enables both the opposition and the coalition to sit down and try to achieve a broad national consensus to achieve both goals. And I believe this is possible. We're now engaged in exactly this conversation.
So how exactly will this war of words between the two leaders impact the relationship between the two sides? Israel's former Premier Yair Lapid has explicitly said that Netanyahu's moves have ruined the relationship between the two countries. Lapid has shown his concern, saying that Netanyahu's extreme government has ruined ties with America in just 3 months. And let's remind you, this is after Israel remained America's closest ally for decades. Netanyahu's government's attempts, meanwhile, to weaken the power of the country's courts has led to an eruption of anger, and within some communities in the US as well. It looks like Netanyahu's delay as far as the judicial reforms is concerned is not enough for the protesters. Critics saying Netanyahu is simply delaying the judicial reforms because of the ongoing corruption trial. And Netanyahu, on the other hand, has denied such claims. Many Israelis might be supporting Biden's words. At this moment, as many critics can see through Netanyahu's words, they are calling the leader's moves a fundamental threat to the country's checks and balances. The reforms are capable of evaporating minority protection, foster corruption, and damage the economy, they say. But the leader is not backing down. He has announced forming a national guard under Ben-Gvir's control. Critics say that Netanyahu is going to create a militia which will endanger Israeli citizens, particularly the protesters. But it looks like the demonstrators have America's president on their side, at least for now. But will Netanyahu still go about wreaking havoc as far as the country's democracy is concerned, or will he change his demeanor towards his own country? I have a question for you. When was the last time you used cash? Quite possible that it's been a while. After all, most people prefer cashless payments these days. They are quick, they are easy. There is no hassle of handling bills or keeping the exact change. And now there has been an announcement of an extra fee on some UPI transactions in India. What does this mean for you? Will you have to pay the surcharge? The answer is no, at least not directly. Let me just break it down for you. From the 1st of April, merchants will have to pay up to 1.1% fee on UPI transactions worth over 2,000 rupees or $24.3. It is an interchange fee. Basically, it's charged by one bank to another for processing a transaction. The amount will vary for different sectors and merchants. Here's what we know. For fuel, the cap is 0.5%. For telecom, post office, education and agriculture, it is 0.7%. There would be a 0.9% fee for supermarket transactions and 1% fee for government, railways, mutual funds and insurance. But here's the good part. individual users making personal transactions will not be charged any additional fees. So you can rest easy. There will not be any surcharge on direct bank-to-bank transactions. The fee will only be levied on prepaid payment instruments. In simple terms, on your digital wallets like Paytm, PhonePe, Google Pay that allow you to store money and make payments. So what is the fuss about? Why has the National Payments Corporation of India announced this fee in the first place? And how does it affect you? There is no denying that UPI transactions are convenient. In fiscal year 2017 to 18, there were 20.7 billion digital transactions in India. The figure jumped to 81.9 billion in the fiscal year 21 to 22. As of June 2022, digital payments constituted about 40% of all the payments in India. Since 2020, the number of UPI transactions has been doubling year on year. By 2026, 2 out of every 3 transactions are projected to be digital. So long story short, UPI payments have skyrocketed, but banks and payment service providers have been struggling with the high cost. Let me explain how. According to the Reserve Bank of India, all stakeholders in a UPI transaction bear a 0.25% cost. By stakeholders, I mean the payer, beneficiary banks, the third-party app, and the NPCI. In 2020, India's finance minister announced that the RBI and banks will absorb the UPI costs. The payer, merchant, and the app will not be charged anything. But to what extent? The value of all UPI transactions in the financial year 21 to 22 was $10.2 billion. If we assume the overall cost for all UPI payments to be 0.1% of the transaction value, the total figure would still be over $1 billion. And this far exceeds the government incentives that only cover payments under 2,000 rupees. The new surcharge is meant to reduce these costs for the banks. It aims to increase their revenue. As I told you, the charges are to be paid by the merchants. But what if the merchants direct them towards you? Would you like to pay extra fee for simply avoiding cash? Doesn't sound fair, does it? So what can you do if it comes down to that? There are some loopholes. First off, you can break down your bill. You are under no obligation to pay the entire amount in one go. If the check is over 2,000 rupees, split it into multiple payments under that amount. Secondly, you can simply go for bank-to-bank transactions. Use your digital wallets for paying smaller amounts and use UPI for the bigger sums. But what if the merchants discourage you from digital transactions? What if they start demanding cash? What happens then? This is something that the NPCI needs to tackle. The world is facing another major public health crisis. I'm not talking about another virus or flu. It's something much more prevalent. I'm talking about obesity. The World Health Organization is trying to deal with it. It is considering including obesity-combating drugs in its essential medicines list. A panel will be coming up with a decision next month. So what exactly are these drugs and how do they work? One of them is called Saxenda. It is a once daily injection. It helps people reduce 5% to 10% of their body weight. It costs $450 per month in the US and $150 per month in the UK. Another one is Wegovy. It is a weekly injection. It costs $1,300 a month in the US. Users have reported losing up to 15% of their body weight. You see, these medicines come with exorbitant price tags. Third world countries cannot afford them. So what happens when these drugs make it to the World Health Organization's list? They would become more accessible to the low and middle income countries. More governments would source them and more people would be able to consume them. While the WHO's decision could be a small win, we cannot ignore the fact that prevention is better than cure. What the WHO is aiming to do would cure this problem, but it cannot by far reduce it. Have a look at these numbers. Globally, more than 2.8 million people die due to obesity every year. Around 1.3 billion adults are overweight. 650 million of them are obese. 39 million children under the age of 5 were overweight or obese in the year 2020. Over half of obese people live in just 10 countries. They are the US, China, India, Russia, Brazil, Mexico, Egypt, Germany, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Did you notice something? Most of these countries are low or middle income countries. It shows that poverty is one of the biggest drivers when it comes to obesity. And why is that? Because people with meager incomes cannot buy healthy food. So they make do with cheap fast food. If you visit these countries, you will find cheap stands in every nook and cranny, offering inexpensive food with no nutritional value. How can providing obesity medicines be enough then? The WHO's move does not quite cut it. And the scary part is the rates of obesity are continuously rising. They are particularly bad among children and in the third world countries. The World Obesity Federation predicts that more than 4 billion people will be obese or overweight within the next 12 years. Can you imagine that? That is more than half of the world's total population. These people will be at risk of hypertension, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, stroke, coronary heart diseases, gallbladder diseases, sleep apnea, breathing issues, you name it, the list goes on. Obesity is not only a healthcare issue, it is also an economic problem. Studies, after all, show that obese people are more likely to be less productive at work. They also take more sick leaves as compared to non-obese employees. If 51% of the world's population is on the path to being obese, there would be a dip in productivity. What would that mean for the economy? While the WHO's move could help tackle the problem, it is a far cry from a long-term solution. Instead of focusing on drugs, maybe it should focus on ways to prevent obesity. The issue needs to be addressed at the grassroots level. Let's now shift focus to India. Yesterday, we told you how the Wuhan virus seems to be on the prowl once again in the country. The number of COVID-19 cases is gradually on the rise. And India has already witnessed the highest number of cases in the past 5 months. Should you be worried? And what is causing this spike in infections? Is another wave of the deadly virus on the horizon? Our next report getting you the big picture.
India is yet again witnessing a surge in the number of COVID-19 cases. The country has logged in 2,151 new cases, while the number of present active cases increased to almost 12,000. With the rise in number of infections, these parts of the country are in focus. The state of Maharashtra has 450 new cases. Delhi reported 214 fresh cases. The southern state of Kerala has 215 COVID-19 cases, while Karnataka and Tamil Nadu hold similar numbers of 135 and 105 newly detected COVID-19 cases. The fresh number of cases has stretched the total tally to over 4.5 million cases since the first outbreak. The good news is that the national recovery rate has been recorded at over 98%. The high recovery rate may come as a ray of hope that the country might just break free from the COVID curse. What has triggered this rise in infections? Epidemiologists are saying that the new variant XBB.1.16 could be the reason. We earlier spoke to a health expert who said that countries are witnessing new variants as the virus mutates over time. XBB.1.16 being the newest strain in the ring. The variants come from the Omicron family, which has a higher infectivity rate but a lower virulence, which means that it has lesser capability to severely harm the host. According to the health expert, India is witnessing a seasonal version of the Wuhan virus. In fact, the Indian government has been busy undertaking efforts on various fronts. The country is set to undertake drills at health facilities, which would ensure the operational readiness of hospitals. Teams of health officials are aiming to take stock of the availability of medicines, hospital beds, medical equipment, and most importantly, the supply of adequate medical oxygen. Similar exercises were seen in countries like China, Japan, Brazil, and South Korea when they were fighting a surge in cases. Health experts say that most Indians have antibodies to fight the infection, and even if there is a rise in number of cases, the total number of cases will remain low. The COVID-19 virus might stay with us for the long haul, which could cause mild fever and a cold. So even as the number of cases slowly rises in the country, doctors say a serious wave of infections is not probable in the near future, given that people take precautions and get vaccinated at the right time.
And last night was an eventful one thanks to a celestial treat. 5 planets came together to deliver a stellar performance. It was quite a show, and if you managed to be a spectator, you know what I'm talking about. It was a memorable night for stargazers as 5 planets, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Mars and Uranus were aligned near the moon. Looks spectacular, does it not? Among the spectators was Indian superstar Amitabh Bachchan, who shared a video of the celestial show. This cosmic spectacle is often called a planetary parade. Clear skies were, of course, a must to be able to witness it. It was difficult to view this spectacle unless you were in a location with an unobstructed view of the horizon. Jupiter appeared brighter than Mercury. Venus was the brightest planet of the group and was visible through the naked eye. It was brighter to the upper left of Jupiter and Mercury. Uranus was the most difficult to find without visual assistance. It appeared near Venus, but very faintly. Mars appeared very high in the sky. While the planets appear to be coming together in the sky, it does not mean that they are actually closer to each other. This sort of alignment happens when the orbits of the planets align them on one side of the sun from Earth's perspective, looking like a string of pearls. Such alignment happens from time to time with different combinations of planets and different number of planets. This latest planetary show happened just days after Jupiter and Venus came together in the evening sky. And there was a 5-planet alignment last summer. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn participated in that. If you also got to witness the latest planetary performance, write to us, tag us on Instagram and Twitter, share your pictures and your experience with us. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.